Hey there, welcome back to the Path to Zion podcast where we are rediscovering the ancient way. Thank you so much for tuning back in. We are doing what? The 10 for 10 series, 10 episodes for 10 topics over 10 consecutive days. We have been churning out. I just moments ago finished talking about did Yeshua break the Sabbath? And boy, that one I realized I talked 400 miles per hour and I crammed a wealth of thought into a mere few minutes. And so this one we can pace ourselves a little bit better. We can walk along just like you and I are walking through the park. And what are we talking about? We're talking about this Hebrew word, hevel. It is a very interesting word that maybe only 4 or 5 years ago I really came into any understanding towards. And so what we're going to talk about is primarily, if you know the word of Elohim, you know that all throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, you see this word depending on the version that you read and grew up with. Most of us are familiar with the writer saying everything is meaningless or everything is vanity. And all the way from chapter 1 to the chapter that ends there in chapter 12, vanity, meaningless, vanity, meaningless. And it is repeated. And so what I want to do is I want to present to you what I believe is a better understanding that maybe you have not heard before or you just have not quite grasped. That's going to be a key word here in a minute. Like I had not for most of my life. So we're going to look at this text right here. We're just going to read these two verses. This is kind of the bookends of Ecclesiastes. And it starts out, vanity of vanities, says the preacher or the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That starts out at the very beginning. Do you get the point? All is vanity, all is vain, all is meaningless. And at the very end, you kind of weave through these accounts of this writer, and it concludes with this, literally. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear Yahweh. There's two things to do here. Fear Yahweh and keep His commandments. And then we're even given why. Why? For this is the totality of mankind. Okay? And so what we're going to ask this question, and I hope answer pretty quickly, we will do this in the allotted time quite easily, is everything really meaningless? Is everything mere vanity? Do we need to go through our lives where nothing matters? And, I mean, there are plenty of believers who do that. I know many Christians who are just enduring this awful, wretched, sinful, fallen world, and they're expecting a rapture up out into the sky where they are removed and they go to sweet Beulah land in heaven. Now, these things are not biblical in the way that we have inherited them. They're just not. But nonetheless, many people are clinging to these verses, and I believe because of poor translations and improper teaching, have just said, well, the writer of Ecclesiastes says nothing matters. Everything's vanity. That's vain, that's meaningless, so what's it all matter? But the question has to be asked, is that really what the writer intended for us to glean from this throughout this book? Now, Ecclesiastes as a book of the Bible is overflowing with many challenging things to read. The preacher repeats over and over again in many different ways that he has experienced it all. The good, the bad, the ups and the downs of life. He has gone here, he's gone there, he's experienced it all. And his constant conclusion throughout all of these things that he participates in his life is everything is, to use the Hebrew word, hevel. Everything is hevel. Again, poor translation would lead us to believe that nothing matters, is what he's saying. He's done it all and it's all just meaningless. But that's not what this text is presenting to us, and I want to walk us through that for the next few minutes. He's using this intriguing Hebrew word. Havel is used to express that life is summarized. We could do this if we went through all the definitions. It is a vapor. It is as smoke, hence the background on the image there. Smoke is most surely a tangible thing. I grew up with a dad and a grandfather who smoked pipes and another grandfather who smoked cigars. I went through a season, of course, 30 years ago of smoking cigarettes. Smoke is a tangible thing. You can see it. You can often smell it. You know it's there. Think of a campfire. Even if you have a smoky campfire, you're burning something or whatever, smoke is identifiable. You can see it. But make an attempt to grab it, and it will be futile. You will have no success in obtaining the vapor, the smoke, okay? It's beyond our control entirely, and we're already getting into the meaning of Havel. Now, smoke, vapor, Havel, it is demonstrable. You can tell it's there, but it cannot be manipulated. It can't be handled and grasped. It surely is there, but it cannot be apprehended by you nor me, okay? And so now we're already starting to see, oh, this is maybe more along the lines of what life is. So, as the book of Ecclesiastes takes us through these bends and curves of life, a conclusion is presented by this wise teacher. Since all is a vapor, since all is as smoke, since all is just as a breath that comes and goes, do this. What? Fear Yahweh and keep His commandments. Okay? And here we are again. Keep is, I have to do this over and over again. If you have not watched it, we did a video series on Shamer. Shamer is keep. I know so many believers, Christians, who I love, who love the Lord and just they're ignorant like I have been and am still in many ways in my life towards the deeper things of the Scriptures and of the Newer Testament, both. But just real ignorant and void of understanding towards the Older Testament. Keep is not such a burdensome, horrible, heavy, weighty, no man can bear burden of keeping the commands. Keeping is a beautiful thing, friend. So, after everything has been heard, after one version says, after everything has been said and done, fear Yahweh, reverence Him, revere Him, exalt Him, magnify Him, and keep, guard, shamer, treasure, value His commandments. Keep them close to your heart. Keep them dear, which is what all the texts in the Older Testament talk about, including the Psalms. So the conclusion is presented as a solution of sorts. And in Hebrew, conclusion speaks of what we might think that it would mean. It is an end. The end of it all are these two things. And to close out the book, the writer uses another interesting Hebrew word. He states that this conclusion, fearing Yahweh and keeping His commandments, is the totality of all mankind. All humanity. No matter who one is or what he does, there is one conclusion, friend, listen to this. There is one conclusion for all of humanity, for every single human being that will ever live. Fear, obedience, reverence, awe of Yahweh, and obedience to His commands. So as you sit, friend, as you think about what I'm presenting, perhaps you know this and so much more, and perhaps you've not heard this before, wherever you land with that. As you assess your life, it's surely full of ups and downs, trials, easy times, tough times, twists and turns. Heed the words and the teachings of the wise preacher right here in Ecclesiastes. The end of all things for all of humanity really is quite simple, friend. Fear Yahweh and keep His commandments. You're watching the Path to Zion podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. More on the 10 for 10 series right after this. Amen.